Today on the Three Guerrillas podcast, we revisit the raid where the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms attempts to arrest David Koresh, the leader of the Branch Dividians. We're talking about the siege at Waco, also known as Operation Showtime. You have found the Three Guerrillas podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Three Guerrillas podcast. Hey, Joe. Hey, Mark.
Hello, Gregory.
Hey, how are you doing, Greg?
What's up,
Good,
Joe?
man. How y'all doing?
It's all good.
It's all good.
It's all good, brother. It's all good.
So I'm kind of excited about this. This is something, our first episode was about the Rainy Street Ripper. And this one, I figured out the sooner the better. I figured out something that I have two individuals, both of you, that were actually at the siege of Waco. You responded to the siege in Waco, the Branch Dividians. And I thought, man, what better information can I get on something that was very controversial, and I think law enforcement learned a lot of things from that, and to have you two guys do it.
Yeah, well, it was a memorable event, especially when you had four officers that were, killed during that event, and a lot of debriefings later, a lot of things that went there. Also, one of the things that a lot of people know, we worked with BATF on several other missions before that. And as a matter of fact, every once in a while, we would get together in Christmas, remember, with O'Leary and all his team, and we'd have Christmas parties at the Marriott. We've done a couple of those, and they were a great group of guys. So we formed a bond with them, and that's pretty much on February 28th, 1993. That's why we got the call. Now, as everybody knows, this thing went down at 9:30 in the morning, and then we got the call at 3 in the afternoon. And we amassed the team, which was that takes some doing, and we got there. And I remember it was torrential rain all the way over there. And we got there at 5:15. We got the call at 3, and at 5:15,
Wow.
we were there.
That was
we were humming. The call that we got was, hey, we need help. We've had four of our guys killed. And as you can imagine, that was an urgent. Of course, they told us that already, stuff had already gone down. But once we got there at 5:15, just to jump ahead, there was another shootout at 6 o'clock. So we were there for that. It was pretty nerve-wracking until the shots start ringing out. You don't know how you're going to react to something, but it's very disconcerting, as you well know, if you've ever been in one of those situations, especially for what we had learned when we got there. The people that were there, just so I can briefly mention, we had 20 members. And we had, I believe it was a total of 18 or 16 that showed up. Amongst them, of course, my colleague and friend and, best man, Sawa, he was there. George Sedal, Stan Cardenas, rest his soul. McGahan, rest his soul. Harlan, Hibbs, York, and Jamie Page, of course, rest his soul. Van Dyson, rest his soul. And Cosper, and Blackwell. So we had a pretty array in Pickering. We had a pretty big array of people that went and witnessed that. A lot of them, of course, have moved on to see the big Ellie in the sky. But when we got there, when we received that call, there was an after-action report that I did, and I went point by point. And when I did my report, I pointed out all the deficiencies that we saw at that time. And from that point on, I actually kept, believe it or not, let me reach over here. Kept a big binder, and I have all my stuff right here. And I collected just about every news report from the time it happened, and every report that I could get my hands on to analyze what I had seen. And one thing that struck me when we first got there, it was command and control. It was pretty not there. And I don't know if that was Mark's, initial assessment, because when we started assessing the area, there was no inner perimeter, outer perimeter. There was nothing really set up. And this is now, remember, 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and you had gaps everywhere in your perimeter. I know Waco SWAT was there, and to try to get our troops together. We were right, literally across from the compound itself. Actually, as a matter of fact, we could actually, it was pretty close. We could see the compound from where we're at. It was like a barn, wasn't it, Mark? It looked like this barn structure that we were at.
Yeah, it was a barn.
And we deployed 2 of our snipers out, and then we went ahead and evacuated people. That was another mission that we got. One of the things that we got. Go ahead.
So before we get into that, how was it that the ATF ended up contacting you guys? Because obviously you're working for the sheriff's office in Austin, and was this something that y'all normally worked with them, or how did that go?
Yeah, we worked with them, and I guess they were trying to get help because this was a mess. When we got there, again, the biggest mess was there was one guy in this like command vehicle, and he had like 2 radios, and he was talking to, I believe, Washington at the time, trying to coordinate and do whatever they were telling him to do. Then there was a staging area. We didn't go to the staging area. We went straight to the fire. So units coming in, as you imagine, there was a disproportionate amount of people coming in, and they were trying to assess this whole mess. And it was chaotic. The first 24 hours, anything like this is total chaos.
So you knew the guys at ATF. This wasn't something that you just showed up and you didn't know anybody. You knew them.
No, we had worked Operation Caballo with them. There's another heroin thing that we did with them, and we worked with them on that. And based on that, they went ahead and called us. In Caballo Negro, we used a horse trailer, and as you can see, appreciating that picture that you had, they rolled up there with a horse trailer. Unfortunately, there's no horses or cattle in that area, and they were using that as one of the vehicles that they were going to go ahead and dismount again, like we did. There it is. And go in there and do their thing, but there was no element of surprise. And those vehicles and that horse trailer offer absolutely zero cover. You have concealment, but the weaponry look, and you can see by that picture all the bullet holes on the top center window and everything else in there. It's a mess. It is a mess. And that compound, and I think I sent you a picture of it. That compound is just enormous. It's a monstrosity. And even now, if you told me today that we were going to go ahead and do a raid of that magnitude on a compound that had like multiple levels, multiple rooms, and you can see it right there. I've got a sketch diagram of the inside of the compound after the fact. And it's just a monstrosity. And if you look at it, you can appreciate that. Then you have all the obstacles, all those trenches on the left side that were not completed. Again, it's just a complete nightmare.
Were those trenches just construction trenches? They were expanding the place, or was that?
Yes, they were expanding the place, and they were building, and it had tunnels too. There was tunneling underneath there. It was pretty insane what they had.
So I have to ask you, the Caballo Negro that you said, what was that? What was that all about?
Well, Caballo Negro, they named it Operation Caballo Negro because it was designed to take out a black tar heroin operation.
And this is unrelated to Waco. This is way before
completely unrelated to Waco, but they asked us to come with them, our team. And then since it was an equestrian place, obviously they had cattle and horses, we were able to make our approach on a horse trail like you saw there. And they used that, I'm assuming. It's conjecture on my part right now. I didn't specifically ask, hey guys, did you use this because we used it in Caballo Negro? No, but you can I drew that analogy immediately. When I saw that, I said they used that to bring their team in. And unfortunately, of course, they didn't have the element of surprise as we found out really early on.
Now, just because I have a little bit of background in knowing a little bit about Caballo Negro from you telling me, you have to tell me how effective and how amazing it was, deploying from a moving trailer. That's something that
I will defer. I will defer to Mark on that because he's definitely suffered the consequences of that one a
Yeah.
couple of times.
Mark.
So for some reason, the leadership of our team thought that if the fractions of seconds that we would account for by diving out of a moving trailer, somehow that would equate to a safer mission. So we started off with the trailer moving at 11 miles an hour, and then with
Because we
every
can all,
single
because a man can everybody can run 11 miles an hour.
yeah, and so now I say
You're
the
the
trailer was
bolt.
moving at 11 miles an hour. That's according to whoever was driving that trailer, as
Uh,
they were trying to look out, looking out the window to see the team unask the trailer and move up to the target location. So when I say 11, it was probably 15, maybe 16, 17 miles an hour, but we whittled it down to 2 miles an hour. And each and every time the team's coming out and they're confused why me and Art Cardenas are going ass over teacups every single time we exit that trailer, not realizing that Art's carrying a shield that's about 35 pounds and I'm carrying a ram that's 50 pounds. So as we're coming out of that trailer, we're trying to navigate that extra weight that's out in front of us, and then of course rolling on the ground. So finally, it came to the attention of our leadership that you're not really the tenths or hundredths of a second that you're going to gain as a result of everybody coming out of that trailer by in fact coming out on their feet. Certainly, the end doesn't justify the means as far as not stopping that trailer and unasking that trailer the way any other raid team unasses a trailer. It was the most ridiculous thing ever.
Well, that's the thing is that as I've spoken with y'all before, I'm a great Monday morning quarterback. I love learning from mistakes. And I believe that any officer that's killed in the line of duty does not want to be insignificant. He wants something to help out law enforcement or help out society from his death. And so when we're talking about, the officers that were killed on the Waco siege with the Branch Dividians, I believe that all of this is germane to what we're talking about, learning from these things, because you guys know Mark, you and I started in 86. Joe, you started in 71.
1776. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
BC.
And so, we have the perspective from them, but we have new people that are on our SWAT teams. We have new people that are on our, street response teams that have never made the mistakes that we already did. And they will look at us as we're, those old guys, they don't know that. Hey, you know what we should do? We should get a horse trailer and jump out of the back of it.
Yeah, well, it's moving.
We already tried that, fellas.
Yeah,
At least while it's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're Neanderthals. But one of the things that there was another point to make on this too. We used to work with the Austin Police Department Tactical and Round Rock both. So all of them got dispatched too. The advantage we had on that is that we had all worked together. So when we got there, we were able to at least communicate amongst ourselves, not so much the deal. But these are observations that were made, okay, upon arrival at the scene. And this is, again, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1, 2, about 6-7 hours into this, it was still a chaotic mess. And I noted that. I said the scene was confusion and chaos. Okay, that was my first observation. Nobody seemed to know who was in charge. Even then, okay, everything, and this guy's talking to, whoever he was talking to. There were no liaison officers appointed to coordinate the efforts of incoming, nothing. And that, when you get to any scene, and Mark, you've been to many of them, and the initial scene, especially when now you have 4 officers that have perished and you're trying to get that out. And it's just utter, I can only imagine. And I didn't, when I got there, I looked at that, I can understand why it was that way. because of the planning portion on this. To me was, I read so much about this, and these guys had been there on station 2 weeks before, running around town. So you have to look at that too.
When you got there, where were the injured officers at that point, or the
They had
deceased?
already taken them out. They were gone.
So
They had
when
gone up there and had like a truce. And even the news media, I got the pictures here, which was very, very disheartening. You're seeing the officers running up there with their hands up. Not like other stuff that you've heard pass here in the last couple of years. Truly, they had their hands up, trying to go up there and retrieve the bodies of their fallen comrades.
Wow.
And the Dividians allowed them to do that. But they had all the advantage. If you look at that place, it sits at an elevation. There's an elevation there. And then on top of that, you put that tower that they had. I mean, they could pick anybody off that they wanted very easily. They chose maybe not to, but they could do it at any time they desired to do that. And at 6 o'clock, I don't know. Mark might know a little bit more about that. I read there was another, incident that and we heard it. We were there, and that they engaged. I don't know who engaged what. Do you remember, Mark?
Yeah, there was a breakout between some of the Branch Dividians broke out of the compound, and there was a secondary gun battle there that happened. And one of the Dividians was actually killed in that gun battle. So that was not something that's widely known, but it's pretty overshadowed by the overall complexity of the initial raid itself.
And there were, a lot more points that we could make and sit here. And again, and as Mark being a SWAT commander in the time, you've conducted raids, I've conducted raids. We have a threat assessment. Okay, per se, we always have a threat assessment. Really, ours has evolved quite a bit, and I think it's very important. If we were let's go ahead and go to the past and have a threat assessment of that place, I guarantee you they wouldn't have run with that. The threat assessment would have told them, yeah, you're going to have to pick another, route to do this, because there's just no way of covering any of that at all. If they engage you,
I'll tell you about a threat assessment. Gregory, just by chance, was actually my threat assessment guy. He's actually the one that brought my threat assessment full circle when I was the lieutenant over the SWAT team. And by using an acronym called PACE, Primary, Alternate, Contingency, and Emergency. And that when you have the opportunity to put together that type of plan, which you ordinarily did in a kind of a tactical operation where you're, have the liberty to plan it out. You have some time in order to put it together. That when you have that luxury, that you utilize that PACE acronym and you put together that primary, your alternate, contingency, and emergency. So you have a fallback with almost any scenario that plays out. Now, of course, if you're in a dynamic situation like a patrol type function, you may only have the opportunity, because of the fleeting time, the tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving circumstances, to put together a primary plan. But if you have the opportunity, the one thing that PACE taught me, and Greg taught me actually, was that when you have the opportunity, that that the best laid plan is a PACE acronym or the PACE plan, but always hold in the back of your mind, no matter how rapidly you have to deploy, is that you have a primary plan. You should always seek to have that, call it an alternate plan, call it a contingency plan, tertiary plan, as the Marines call it, or an emergency plan, that you have some other plan you can fall back to, or a fallback plan, some other plan you can fall back to. So I owe that to Greg.
Well, and that's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize it. We're all very critical of law enforcement initially, because of course the news wants to make the news and they want to have ratings. And so they make things look ridiculous when oftentimes they are not. But when they are, like you said, it very chaotic. And you're looking at what you wanted to do, but there's all these other elements, right? You're going to do something, all of a sudden some civilians that have nothing to do with anything get in your way. That could be just with a vehicle pulling in front of you, or actively seeing cops going over there, so they start yelling and jacking with you. I've had that multiple times. But also, it could be political, or it could be operational. Like, we need to get this done. It's Friday afternoon. I don't think it's going to wait. It's not going to wait till Monday. We need to put this thing together real quick. And you find yourself being dictated on your timeline by external circumstances. And I tell my students all the time, I tell cadets in academies all the time, do not allow anybody else to dictate, in the manner in which you're going to do something. Obviously, things go to hell, and all of a sudden there's nothing else. You have no other choice. But don't allow these other forces to accelerate you or slow you down or whatever. Work at your own pace when you're doing that stuff. And that's why I see like this. We can sit back and, first thing off, why did you go to the compound? What, you're trying to arrest the head guy? He goes into town and goes to the restaurant and goes to lunch. Why wouldn't you just set it up and just do some sort of random thing and snatch him while he's, at the Arby's in town, instead of going to his backyard? You don't want to mess with a dog in his backyard, So,
well, it's interesting that you would say that. That's a very, very, very good point. Because again, like we learned, they could have just got him anytime they wanted. But what was the reason behind that? And I read like the initial thing that they said, hey, we were outgunned, and their leader, they were trying to deflect and everything else. Then we found out that the informant, which good friend of ours, right, Mark Rodriguez, good guy. He went ahead and told them. He told them, "Hey, you need to shut this down. This is going nowhere." And the cast was dying. I got all the. Now this is what I'm looking at. I went ahead and put all these people out there in the field, your command, and I spent all this money because they did. I mean, they had people in hotels, this, that, and the other. And now, come hell or high water, like you said, we are going no matter what. See, that's what dictated this. And was it political? Was it not? Was it this guy wanted to save face? Hey, I got all these people here. I'm not going to cancel it. There's no reason that. Oh, and I read along the way too that, oh no, they don't know we're coming. Yes, they know we're coming, and all this stuff. And all that became completely irrelevant when Rodriguez told them, they know you're coming. It's over. Party's over. You had the news media camped out in front of your place too, that you could, they were very visible. So, but getting back, another thing that you mentioned too, I learned a long time ago when I was privileged to go to the United States Army Ranger School, you always, and even in infantry school, they teach you have to have a rally point of some sort.
Yep.
You make an operations order, you're going to get a warning order, and then you're going to go to get your regular order, and then you're going to have all this stuff built into it. These things are huge. And that was just military stuff. And you look at this raid right here, man, it just lacked all kinds of stuff. And just as a note of one of the things that I wrote, I said, personnel that had been involved in the actual incident, because I made all these bullets of stuff that I saw. Personnel that had been actually involved in the incident itself had not been relieved and taken to the rear command post and debriefed. Instead, they were running around and talking whomever they found to tell them what happened over and over and over again. The walking wounded. Yeah. I'm talking about mentally the walking wounded. You had also, upon arrival, again, we saw civilians inside the inner perimeter and outer perimeter. And then, again, there were all kinds of tactical officers. We knew our guys. We knew the guys in Waco because as soon as I got there, I made contact with him and we brought everybody together what we could. But there were other tactical units deployed coming in there. And until we got everybody together and are able to calm everybody down, that took more hours upon hours to get that thing, settled down. And then we went ahead and, of course, stayed all night long. The ATF agent, again, in the command post, was not notified that there was, street lights, their street light locations. They weren't notified of anything surrounding that location. He had zero information that he could give us. Nothing. There were no diagrams. There were nothing that they could give our team to at least be able to assess initially, other than what we could observe at the time. Anyways, and I went on and on and on and on. But again, as this thing started to develop, we stayed there. We evacuated some people that were around because they hadn't evacuated anybody in the surrounding areas. And remember, we had a shootout at 6, but there was houses in that area too that were not evacuated. And part of our team, loaded up, went ahead and went out there to do it, well knowing that at any time that tower had a bead on us. There's just no question about it. But we were able to get those people, move them to safety, establish the perimeter as best we could, and we stayed there all night long. I didn't sleep a wink. Now, Mark, we were sitting there just watching that guy, and the
cold too.
And he Mark, it was miserable.
Mark, I could probably name like 20 incidents out of a 32-year career in law enforcement. I could probably name a good solid 20 incidents that were like those foundation pieces of what turned me into the person that I am now, what reflects my life, and like, wow, that made me think a lot. Was this one of those times for you?
Oh, without a doubt, especially from a leadership standpoint, because this was across the board a failure of leadership. This is where, from start to finish, the leadership that put together this plan, number one, defied any exterior influence. So the ATF, when they put together this plan and said, hey, we're going to have multiple entry points, multiple breach points on a search warrant. Okay. This isn't a hostage rescue where you have to dominate area within a certain period of time, and then you take those chances. Because hostages' lives supersede officers' lives, and you have to take those chances. So area domination and area denial are of the utmost importance in hostage rescue. That's why there's multiple breach points. But there is almost never a multiple breach point in a search warrant, especially when when areas connect. So where officers are entering one side and officers are entering another side, that at least in multiple breach points, they're not interacting. They're not integrating. There's not interlocking officers coming in, or fire that could come across inadvertently. At least there's walls that separate these multiple breach points. So there was, right off the bat, just from a principle standpoint, it's one of the foundational principles regarding search warrants. Is it only in the most advantageous way would you have multiple breach points in a search warrant? And then not only that, you have secondary or second floor breach points. So you added multiple breach points, you're adding second floor breach points. You're talking about a complexity that far exceeds the normal standard. And so consequently, the leadership from the ATF ignored any exterior influence that factored into that, because anybody that touched this outside of ATF was like, that's ridiculous. Don't do that. So you learn from a leadership standpoint. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, that's something. So I only worked with ATF 2 times in my career.
When was that? What year was that?
Well, one of them was when George Bush's boat caught on fire. You remember that one? George Bush, when he was governor of Texas, and when he ran for president, during that, his boat was out at Lake Travis, and
were his daughters on board?
No, that would be
because I had a call on that. We had a call on that too.
Yeah, that could have been
Lost Creek. Remember?
Oh yeah. We won't talk about it. Actually, we could have a show on that one.
No.
No, on this one, it was very cold, and his boat caught on fire, and fire responded with their boat, and they hooked onto his boat, and they drug it all the way around and beached it. So our crime scene was from the initial where the boat caught on fire, and then drug it all the way around. So it was about 200 yards long, right? The crime scene was where all this thing is on fire, and it's stuff is sinking. So Travis County, we're going to work this thing. They're like, oh no, we need to get the fire marshal out here. This could have been could be arson. Running for president could be arson. And so they contacted Travis County fire marshal. Fire marshal's like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's the governor of Texas. You need to give that to the, to the state fire marshal.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
State fire marshal said,
on and off on somebody else. No way.
The state fire marshal said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. He's running for president. This needs to be, feds. And so ATF flew in their expert divers from the Great Lakes area. And that should be another story. So I'm gonna keep mine right there. I'm not going to tell any more about that because I think that's a good hour-long podcast right there, because it is
at least
just banjo playing goofiness on this. So the ATF agent that showed up after their divers couldn't dive in Lake Travis because it was too dangerous.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a podcast on it. It was hilarious.
Hey, you guys.
I got video footage.
Yeah. He's out there, and the way he ran that scene, I was just flabbergasted. I was like, I don't get this. But it's one of those things that a lot of cops do this. I'm sure I have done it in my time at some time, where you go into somebody else's realm. You're from Chicago, ATF, you come to Austin, Texas to dive in Lake Travis, and you don't ask anybody the conditions of the water, what to expect, what's going on down there, what could be there. Our dive team used that as a training area. ATF's dive team said it's too dangerous to even dive a mission, and they called it and secured everything, and then flew in NASA underwater drones to look for the stuff. It's another podcast, gentlemen. So anyway, all I'm saying is, I don't want to be critical of other officers, but I do know that other officers often feel that, officers that they don't know as much as they do. And especially when you start throwing the feds in there, I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. You country guys don't know what's going on. And that was my experience. But you said that when you worked with them, they were very, they worked well with you. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very well.
Very well. We worked well with BATF. No problems at all. Getting back, just so you'll know, and if you can make that available, I have no problem releasing this. This is that report that I was telling you about. It's 11-page report. And that way we don't have to go point by point. But one of the points I really want to make here is there's several things in here that would really kind of humor us, because I noticed, for example, let me read this part of it and tell me, Mark, what you think, because you were there. SRT Commander Pickering early on requested that the spotlights be set out to light up the compound, because it was already getting dark. We want to light this up because we don't want the bogeys coming out and doing whatever they're going to do, because we don't know what's going on. Nobody knew at that point. The response that he got, and again, I'm quoting because I was writing everything down. The response he got says they were answered with, "You might make them mad."
I think they just killed four of your officers.
You might make them mad. I'm going like, how much madder? And you think about it, how much madder can you get? I mean, I was just going like, wow. He also requested to move up some elements from various outside teams to establish a perimeter, and this was also denied. He requested that we make contact with, Mike Simpson, Travis County Communications Squad. This was also denied. So we could bring more elements up there to help at least secure some of this until we can get the party going. And all that was denied. Another disturbing fact came to light upon arrival. We learned that there were two separate negotiations going on with Koresh. Two different people were talking to him, two different, completely devoid of each other. And, that again lends to the chaos again that we saw. It wasn't under control. And like Mark said, there was the plan was pretty flawed. Of course, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Once you saw what happened there and you look at the videos and everything else, you realize immediately that it was just a complete, to lack of better word, it was a debauchery. As it was just terrible. And then I go on. Go ahead.
Ask Mark real quick. As far as command and control on this, were they actually using like their IC was in Washington or on a phone?
Yeah. They had a tactical commander there. His name was Hoynovsky, and they had another. They had their other commander there. His name was Seraphin. And when Robert reported back to when Robert left the compound, and that is chilling. I mean, if you want to see something, is find on YouTube the 4th congressional hearing where Robert testifies. We're all virtually all the ATF agents that were involved in that. Not all of them, but the ones that they picked to testify. Robert's testimony is, periodically I use it in my leadership training, and it's chilling. It is chilling.
It's heart-wrenching too. It really is. It will eat you alive just watching this guy.
And if you want to see heart-wrenching, see the video of him in the parking lot after he had called. He went to the forward location after he left the compound, after they allowed him to leave the compound. He went to the forward location and called the tactical command post. He called Seraphin, the tactical commander, and said, they know we're coming. Koresh just told me they know we're coming. What Koresh said, the ATF and the National Guard are coming. They got me before. They're not going to get me again. And he said that, with an enhanced level of emotion and drama. Robert, the National Guard and the ATF got me before. They're not going to get me again. And so he called them from the forward location where he had just left the compound and went to the forward location. And when he got to the command post, when he got to the staging area / command post, they had already left. They had disregarded the fact that he told them that OPSEC was compromised and that Koresh knew that they were coming. That's what the whole thing. Cattle trailers that was holding the raid team was about operation security and about the security of the operation. And he's telling them Koresh told this is their man inside in that location specifically to give them real-time information on what's going on inside the compound. The real-time information was Koresh telling him, looking him in the face, shaking. When you hear that, hear his testimony. He talks about Koresh literally shaking. His hands were literally shaking as he said it. And that when in the video, there's video of it when Robert was at that forward at the command post / staging area, and he's laying on the ground sobbing, knowing that his ATF agents are going into an ambush. Laying on the ground sobbing. The real deal.
I'll look up on YouTube and I will put that video in our show notes.
It's horrific. It's totally
4 hours.
horrific.
It's like 4.5 hours long, but it's worth every second that you watch it. I've watched it probably 30 times.
Joe?
And on that point right there, Greg, also, let me give you a note that I did again, because this report, I go thoroughly through a lot of stuff in this report because it's 11 pages long, and I did it 5 days after. So this was fresh in my mind. And I was pretty agitated when I was putting this together. I had to tone it down quite a bit. But Operation Caballo Negro, and I put a note in here, was a joint operation between tactical teams from Travis County Sheriff's Response Team, Austin Police Department, SMT, DPS, SWAT, Round Rock PD, SRT, and the BATF. This tactical operation involved more than 400 officers. 400 officers taking this whole complex down that had black tar heroin operation, was a huge place. Again, Okay. There wasn't a single bullet fired or an officer hurt. That was the level of, again, all these teams put input, trying to go ahead and make sure that everybody compartmentalized. You've got this, and it was a joint operation, and it worked fine. We had no problems whatsoever. And then we fast forward to this other operation here, and it was just like, ugh, it just, something that just doesn't really, get in there. I go into, just to highlight, again, the intelligence available to BATF, the armed patrol guards, that patrolled the compound. They had armed people patrolling the compound every day. They call them, what is it? God's Marines.
Oh boy.
I mean, Koresh called them God's Marines.
Wow.
And I was just going like, I mean, this is the level of stuff that, and just imagine, Dre, you putting together, you're doing an operation, you're putting together a threat assessment. You have armed guard. You're going to have to take that into consideration or something.
Yeah, I'm not going down there. I'm going to wait till he goes to Arby's to get a sandwich, and we're going to take him down. We're going to do a vehicle.
And then you go on and on and on and on. I mean, all the information, they had training. They were training their people for this stuff. And he knew all of this. They trained their people on a daily basis in the use of firearms, tactics, so forth and so on. I mean, I'm going down the list of everything that I went ahead and put there. And then to finalize what Mark was saying, because I know we're coming pretty close here, but to finalize that, remember, Koresh, if you read about him, his name was not Koresh, it's Howell. And he adopted that name. And I've got a history of the Dividians. It started in, I think, the 1800s. And I got it all the way to Koresh compound, because he wasn't the first one. There was a big fight and a big shootout between Koresh and another guy that was trying to take over the Dividian. There was a power struggle years before that. And they arrested him. Okay, those charges were dropped later, but there was an actual shootout. That enhances this even more so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just gives it that next level stuff that you're looking at this, and you just, you failed in the sections of, your intelligence and how you're going to put this together, and you're just going to roll with this thing. And of course, again, I can say I'm second guessing, but I was there and I saw firsthand the chaos of those first 8 to 10, 12 hours. Mark was there. He saw the same thing I did, and probably has, another perspective on it. But again, that was, like he said, it's a failure of your command staff that costs lives.
Yeah. And knowing all that, like you were talking about a threat assessment, doing a threat assessment on something like that. Wow. I think I would have had a lot of distractions. Can we get some sort of tanker truck to look like it had a problem up there and release a whole bunch of fumes that you could see from the compound, and then send one officer down to the compound. Hey, we need to get everybody out of here. That's whatever the poison is, set something up as a distraction, start acting like you're helping everybody, and then isolate the guys that you want, as they're going out. And that, I mean, there's a 1,000 different ways to do it other than just to run up to the front door and start banging.
And how many times, Greg, if you remember back at the SWAT team, when I was a lieutenant, how many times did we plan around a dynamic entry? I mean, could you even count how many times? I mean,
so I can think of some of the stuff that we did that was so much fun as far as surveillance, and all that. And there's,
do you remember the dog catcher? Do you remember the guy with the 5 pit bulls and me and Tom played like the dog catcher?
Yes.
To distract him, and we came up the sidewalk from behind while we distracted him, playing like the dog, dressed like dog catchers, in the animal control truck to completely drive his attention to us. And here a SWAT team, we crept up an entire SWAT team up the side of the sidewalk and took him down right there in front of his house.
I used to ride around with the street sweepers to do surveillance. I did go over there and have the street sweepers give me a ride. We'd just ride around in our little white suit, says City of Austin.
You know what? And another point here too, and I'm looking at it again, and it's from the time that the inside agent, and we timed it, from the time that the inside agent left the compound to the time the decision to go ahead with the assault was made was approximately between 30 and 40 minutes. I was just like, you gave him 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say he had, instead of 40, he had 30 minutes to prepare because he knows you're coming. And then now, again, he's the demented maniac, obviously. And now you're playing into the biblical portion is, again, Judas betrayed me. And that was Rodriguez. He was Judas to him. Yeah. And then he's going to go do whatever because they let him walk out of the compound. They didn't have to. They could have used him as a hostage.
They knew he's an ATF agent the whole time.
Of course they did. But he wanted him to play into this doomsday crap that he had. That's my theory. And he left the compound like Judas did. And now the Romans are coming to get me. And I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb. I mean, it's crazy.
He liked him too. He's an incredibly likable guy. Robert Rodriguez is an incredibly likable guy, and Koresh liked him. And he, certainly nobody knows what Koresh's motivation was, but he obviously liked him.
And another thing too, you know how many elements were involved assaulting? 42 officers, 42 for that monstrosity, 42 officers. And Mark, like you're saying, if you go in dynamically, right, you have to go ahead and take turf. Okay, as you're going in, you're taking 42 officers ain't gonna cut it in that place.
No, there's no area of denial. All you're doing is dominating. All you're trying to do is dominate. You're not denying any area. So
you're not denying a damn
nobody
thing.
Can stay behind and hold it, basically.
And you're going to be taking people as you go. If you look at this diagram, I have it also in there. You're going to see that it has a gymnasium. It has a first floor, second floor, and third floor. There you go.
Yeah.
3 floors. I mean, look at that thing. Mark, it is, gymnasium. They have, the kitchen area. They have the dorms. I mean, oh my goodness gracious. And then you even have a nursery too. And again, you're going hot. There's kids in there too. I mean,
many tens of dozens of kids.
If your whole premise is, I want to get in there so they don't destroy evidence, I want to get in there to save the kids, you're not going to do it like that. There's just no way. You're asking to go ahead and get an all out. And they knew these guys were heavily armed, had been practicing. They had been observing them for all that time. Again, to me, looking at this whole thing, it was just like unbelievable. It was shocking. It was very shocking. I haven't been back. Every time I drive by Waco, I want to really just go over there and see it. You know how if you've been to a place and you've had a traumatic experience with something, sometimes you'll go back to it. I know I did with Jessica, but it was just like I've never been back. I have never been back. I want to, but I can't take myself to go back.
I think once you retire and once Mark, you retire or comfortable with doing it, I think we should take a road trip.
I think we should.
They have a memorial up there now, and you're allowed on the property, and you can look around.
I know. And I have so many questions, answers not according to the information that we have. I wrote out different sections of this document, and I covered, a lot of command and control, other things like that, and then the personal opinion. Of course, the personal opinion is, again, my thoughts, my opinion as the overall, not everybody else's, but it was mine. Okay. Once they were detected or they were tipped off, the raid should have been called off. That's a given. Yeah. We all agree on that. Yeah. It would be, interesting to be able to view the BATF operational orders, if there was any operational orders, because I looked to see what the overall plan was. And it was very, very sparse. It wasn't a detailed plan. The other thing, it's my opinion that the intelligence available, again, wasn't carefully reviewed by the planners. Again, that's a big point right there. I would be curious to know how many raids of this magnitude of Mount Carmel had the BATF done previously. They did Caballo Negro, but that was with us, 400 different agencies doing it. This was a monster compound. And I don't know, Mark, you can fill me in. You have a little more experience on that one. Anybody else plan a raid like this other than the Israelis, the raid on Entebbe? I mean, this is just, this was a monstrosity. And I've never, other than the military, and you know how the military works, but I've never seen anybody hit anything this big. I could be wrong.
No, and the raid on Entebbe, that was a tiny little area that they went into, and they're not taking prisoners; they're going in there to kill anybody in their sights.
Anybody gets in their way, they're going to hose them down, and they don't have the rules of engagement that we do. We have rules of engagement,
and that's what a lot of people don't quite understand how this type of stuff works. So, just as a generically. If you have, let's say, an incident where you have a SWAT team that secures, let's say, a house. Let's make this really simple. There's a drunk guy. He got home. He had a family disturbance with his wife, held her hostage, and then let her go when the SWAT team got there. But he won't come out, and he's holding the gun to himself. Now, you and I know that all we got to do is wait an hour or so, and he'll pass out, and he'll forget about it in the morning. We can just go home. And we'll deal with warrants or whatever we got to do later on the family.
Keep the family out of the house until he comes later and whatever.
But if he keeps her in there, and we have a SWAT team that's there for 12 hours, we need to get relief, right?
Yes,
the SWAT team is
absolutely.
You're wearing 60 pounds of gear, and it's like you got to get them out of there. So,
and if it's cold, on top of that, even more.
Instead of, like, let's say Travis County, we're going to invite Round Rock in because it's in North Austin where we're working. Round Rock comes in. They don't merge with us. We brief them on everything we have. They take positions. We pull out. They got it. We're not going to be calling on the phone, telling them what to do. They have their own protocol. So it's very unusual. And if they get tired, we go back in and relieve them. Or if we don't have enough people, we'll get another SWAT team to come in and they will take over. They don't merge in there. So when you have like Caballo Negro, you got 400 officers. Well, you have to isolate what teams, what agencies are going to do.
Exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did. Everybody had areas of responsibility.
And that's it. And there's no merging going on. It's like, okay, when I do this, I'll tell you what to do. No. You give me what I need to take. It's my responsibility. I take it. And that's the thing that I watch with this, the ATF very much wanting to be in control, but having none of the answers, really wanting to tell people what to do, but very apprehensive about saying it because they already have 4 officers killed and they're on the phone with whoever this person is up in Washington or whatever, now having to ask permission to do things because of the way that their chain of command works, the way that flow goes. Which
at that time, I don't know if that changed or not, but at that time. But the other interesting thing is that if you look at all the press, and I got every article under the sun until the place burned. And that was a whole different story on what they were negotiating and not negotiating, because DeGuerin was the attorney for Koresh. And a lot of times I got the articles here that he said he's going to come out. There's be no need to go ahead and go any further. He's going to come out. He's going to surrender this, that, and the other. But we all knew there's no way he's going to do that. But DeGuerin kept on saying he was. And of course, he didn't. At the end of the day, the whole thing went up in flames. Who did what, where? I guess it's irrelevant now. The relevancy of it is, the approach that they made to that. Now you have a situation where a lot of people were telling them, why don't you guys just back off? Just back off.
How many times have we done that with SWAT?
Let them trickle out, because if you go and try to do this other stuff, it went up in smoke. So I don't know.
How many times have we done that with SWAT? We get someplace, it is a complete chaotic mess. We learn a few things and we go, you know what? It's smarter for us to get back in our cars and just leave. We know who this person is. We will deal with them later, either when they come off of their drugs or when they're not around other people in a neighborhood that can hurt some other people, and we pull out. The same thing with the Branch Dividians. Of course, like I said, I'm saying this from a Monday morning quarterback as well.
Yeah. And you're dealing with 4 officers murdered and multiple officers shot. So there were multiple officers shot.
Yes, there was a lot of injured. There was, I think, 11, Mark. I think 11 or 12 were wounded.
And it's one of those situations at that point where we're not moving. I don't care what happens at this point. We're not moving. But like you said, tens of dozens of children in there.
Yeah.
And
there certainly was. And there was.
And they died.
Yeah.
They died.
Yeah.
There was just no if. So, the greater good, or, I don't know. It was all around, for me, it was all around tragic.
Joe, and Mark as well. I know I've been in situations to where I could have made a better decision.
Sure.
But as a law enforcement officer, I feel like I do this because I want to provide something to my community and also want to be a part of something bigger than myself and do something good for our town, our county, and that sort of thing. But being involved in something like this and sitting back and trying to pull something good out of it and say, I was a part of that. It's difficult in this one.
It is.
What ultimately happens there, to know that I was a part of the initial siege and all of this happening. And you walk away from that thinking, we were trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing. And what is the right thing at this point? And then ultimately, next thing we know, United States Army tanks roll in, poke holes in the building, release gas, and we assume, arson investigators assume, that is what started the fire. There's other argument that, they could have set the fire themselves. I don't know what happened there, but at the end of the day, you have to go home and take a shower and think about what all that was.
If the purpose, and we have to look at the end of it, if the purpose of a search warrant is to search and arrest somebody, as peace officers, when we want a body to arrest. We don't want a body to kill. We want a body to arrest. We want a search warrant to get information. That's the purpose of it. And if I can't do that safely, I'm not going to do it. What I took away from that, I learned, the chaos and everything else, what to do and what definitely not to do. And, a moment of pause for me to go back and go like, that will never, ever happen to me. Not if I have a team, not going to happen. We're not going to do anything like this at all. We're not going to go. I'm not going to risk doing that. If we can't go in safely and do it, we're not going in.
Mark,
there'll be another day. We fight that battle somewhere else. I'm not going to risk my man, and I'm not going to risk having to go and kill somebody when I don't have to.
Right.
Mark, and this is the final thing here is, again, BATF does what? Weapons, right? So they were going in after weapons. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to find weapons, and you did. And you knew you were going to find weapons, and you're trying to what? Oh, but the children, because I read that too. Oh, but the children are being abused. Okay, well, if you're trying to help the kids that are going to be abused and everything else, and you have weapons, you didn't accomplish that.
No.
You just didn't. And you didn't accomplish that in the first 30 minutes that you went ahead and decided to go. So, again.
Mark, what about you?
Well, I mean, it from not only a larger scale, I can't tell you how many times as a patrol sergeant, patrol lieutenant, SWAT sergeant, SWAT lieutenant, captain and major, how many times that the ball was already rolling in a direction and that it would, as a first glance, appear to be a deviation from the mission of the sheriff's office to stop that ball from rolling. But I can't tell you how many times I stopped that ball from rolling and really created adversity between me and maybe my supervisor, or me and county government, or me and my supervisor in county government. But at the end of the proverbial day, it was just as you said, I got to walk back and look myself in the mirror and know that to thy own self be true. It ultimately doesn't matter what it means to others to thy own self be true. And if you know it's the right thing to do, you do the right thing. And there really is ultimately there is no pressure. It's like a catharsis. You know, anytime I've ever done that, to feel that internal self gratification, to know that I did the right thing and that external pressures didn't factor into that. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened in my supervisory career.
And that would be another show too, because that'd be another show because he has some good ones that he stopped. And if he wouldn't have stopped them, it was just, you look at it and say, how could you guys even think about that? And there's checks and balances. That's what we're about.
Right. I tell you what, you know, this is going to go into the Siege of Waco Part 2, because I would really like to go ahead and continue this conversation on another podcast, maybe episode 3. And I'm really interested in the timeline, Joe, that you shared with us before the show, and kind of breaking down that stuff. But it is an hour and 1 minute, and that is the end of our Three Gorillas podcast. Joe, Mark, speaking for you, thanks everybody for listening, and I hope to see you on number 3. Three Gorillas podcast is a zombie advocacy production.